Hello everyone. Now you will hear a brief retelling of the movie The Menu. Enjoy the movie. Tyler waits for his date, Margot, in the local dock for the boat that will transport them to a private island. There, they will have dinner at Hawthorne, a very elite eatery run by the nation's top chef. Tyler is a foodie who is fascinated by this chef's techniques and the specifics of good dining in general. The two of them are taken aback by the number of notable individuals who will be accompanying them when the boat arrives. There's post-prime actor George with his secretary and lover Felicity, there's Lillian, the culinary critic who found the chef, and her editor Ted, and there are three significant investors in internet companies, Dave, Soren, and Bryce. However, businessman Richard and his wife catch Margot's eye since she is aware of Richard and attempts to avoid drawing his attention. They've already had their first gourmet meal of the vacation, which Tyler eats with great enthusiasm while he snaps a photo of, but Margot isn't delighted. The scenario becomes tense when Tyler has to clarify that there was a change in plans and he arrives on a different day after the maitre d' Elsa calls Margot a different name when they eventually get to the island. Prior to dinner, guests are given a tour of the restaurant by Elsa, who explains that the staff members do all of the farming and hunting, which is why everyone lives here. Though it's forbidden to enter his home, the cook also resides on the island. When they eventually do make it into the restaurant, they find that the kitchen is an open space where they can observe the chefs at work. On one of the tables is an elderly woman named Linda who appears to be completely out of place. Richard requests that his wife switch seats with him so that he would have a better view when he eventually sees Margot's presence. Everyone is told by Elsa that while it is permitted to see the cooks at work, photos are not. The cooks had to ask Tyler to quit disturbing them since he instantly approaches to point out all the tricks they're doing and bombards them with questions. Chef Slowick enters at that very time, and Elsa tells him something that causes him to fix his gaze on Margot. The complimentary snack is served first. Felicity is preoccupied with trying to end her relationship with George, while Lillian takes her time preparing the food, carefully sniffing and tasting each item. Tyler feels compelled to smugly explain the significance of this to Margot, who enjoys the dish but isn't much into it. It's time for the first course shortly after. Stepping forward, Slowick claps his hand, causing all of his chefs to whirl around in unison like dutiful little soldiers. Then he gives a speech about his work and tells everyone to enjoy and relish their food instead of just eating it. Tyler tries to comment on that, but just gets reprimanded by Slowick for interfering. Tyler continues to take photos despite the ban. Slowick claps once again as he adds that bread is the food of the ordinary man, but since his guests aren't common, they won't be receiving any bread for the second course. The following dish is a breadless platter with just a few tiny droplets of delicious toppings. Tyler thinks it's hilarious, but Margot finds it offensive. They send an entire bowl of the emulsion to Lillian's table in irony because she believes it does appear slightly split. Even after pointing out that they work for Doug Verricht, the island's real owner, the Tech brothers, who feel the joke is going too far, are turned down for bread. Elsa menacingly assures them that they will eat more than they deserve and less than they want in an attempt to silence them. When Tyler tries to grab Margot's food for himself, he breaks a glass by mistake because she won't finish it. Tyler tries to apologize as Slowick quickly arrives at the table, but the chef is more curious about why Margot isn't eating. When Margot points out that there isn't any food, Slowick says he purposefully made the amount small enough so she won't become full if she doesn't eat. When Margot still won't touch the food, Slowick gets a little upset and leaves, surprising everyone by casually asking how Linda is doing. When Margot can't help but turn to face Richard and observes and remarks that Margot resembles their deceased daughter. Pretending to be unfamiliar with Margot, Richard begs his wife to broach the topic. Slowick gives another clap to indicate the third meal, memory, which inspires him to reminisce about the good old days of taco evenings with his family. He says that Linda is his mother and that ever since he was a child, she has been intoxicated. Initially, his father was an alcoholic, and after Linda confronted him about it one evening, the guy attempted to murder her by using the phone wire. Little Slowick took a pair of scissors and stabbed his father in the thigh in order to save his mother, but he now regrets not killing him. The meal is a smoked chicken thigh served on top of a phone cable with a pair of scissors inside to commemorate that memorable taco night. The tortillas were made freshly, but a laser machine was used to engrave them to give them a unique touch. The narrative disturbs everyone, but when they find out about the memories on the tortillas, things get even more difficult. Lillian discovers images of eateries that shut down as a result of her negative evaluations, while and is horrified to see pictures of her husband's personal life. One in particular depicts Richard going out on a date with an unusual woman, despite his insistence that it's all a joke. George discovers images from his performance in the poorly received film Dr. Sunshine, and the Tech brothers are troubled by the discovery of their company's tax records, which demonstrate that they generated invoices with fictitious charges. Elsa cryptically states that it won't be necessary when the guys threaten to close down this place, refusing to divulge how they came to know that information. Tyler believes Slowick despises him when he sees himself snapping photos of the food. Margot wants to return the dish because she thinks the images are offensive, but Tyler yells at her and calls her a child for misbehaving. When Margot, hurt, decides to use the restroom, Elsa hurries to stop her from going through a silver door that is off limits. When Margot arrives in the restroom, she sees an employee running with a set of angel wings in his arms as she approaches the window to take a smoke. Slowick arrives at that point to question Margot about her refusal to eat again since he is offended by her demeanor, but she simply responds that she isn't that hungry. Slowick is also curious about her true identity and finds it hard to believe her when she says she's just Margot from Nebraska. Just a bit later, the chefs lay out some decorations and a piece of cloth on the floor to begin setting up the fourth dish. Jeremy, one of Slowick's sous chefs, is introduced to the group. He prepared the following meal, which is called the mess. Jeremy attended a prestigious culinary school, and his goal has always been to work for Slowick. Although Slowick acknowledges Jeremy's talent, he doesn't think Jeremy is particularly exceptional. While Slowick believes his life is full of pressure from disgruntled clients and unappreciative critics, Jeremy may want a life of prestige similar to Slowick. When Jeremy responds negatively, Slowick gives him a peck on both cheeks and backs off just before Jeremy pulls a revolver. After that, Slowick declares the fourth course, and Jeremy concludes in public. Except for Tyler, who finds this intriguing, all of the guests panic out and retreat, but the other cooks are unsurprised and observe solemnly. Slowick encourages everyone to have a seat and acknowledge that this is all part of the act while the body is being removed. Richard has had enough of people debating whether or not the death was real. Elsa stops him when he tries to depart with and saying there isn't a boat available. Because Richard won't give up, Elsa gives the chefs the order to seize him and take his ring finger. All of the guests begin to panic once more, with the exception of Tyler, who is content to continue eating. Elsa hands and back the fallen wedding ring as Richard writhes in agony on the ground. Lillian accepts Slowick's explanation that this is part of the menu once more, but the others are beginning to show signs of fear. As they are ostensibly friends, Felicity wants George to speak with Slowick. However, George admits he lied to win her over. When Elsa brings Margot into the kitchen, Slowick informs her that she is just incorrect. She wasn't included in the initial menu plan, so it's problematic that he can tell she isn't a Margot. Slowick is curious as to whether Margot is siding with the patrons or the restaurant, not that it matters, since everyone is going to die tonight anyhow. Tearfully, Margot runs back to her table and slaps Tyler for his incessant chatter about the meal. The eatery is filled with a tense, apprehensive atmosphere. Elsa just leads Soren back to his table when he loses his mind and tries to smash a window with the chair because it is made of indestructible glass. After serving tea as a palate cleanser, the following course is served, and Slowick uses the opportunity to ask if anyone has any questions. When Tyler asks a foolish inquiry regarding the tea, George interrupts and asks what's going on. According to Slowick, the elements in a degustation concept shouldn't come as a surprise. Ted indulges Lillian, who, for instance, is a monster who closes restaurants due to her own preferences. More broken emulsion is brought for Lillian by the cooks, and Elsa gives Margot a kitchen timer with 10 minutes remaining. When and then requests that Richard see a doctor, Slowick points out that despite being the most devoted patrons for 5 years, they are unable to recall a single dish from their meal here. Slowick put a lot of effort into becoming a highly upscale chef, but it wasn't until lately that he realized he was doing all of this work to appease unsatisfied individuals, like his own mother. Bryce corrects Slowick when he refers to the establishment as his restaurant, pointing out that Doug Verrick is the real owner. It then becomes clear that Doug is hanging outside while sporting the angel wings as Slowick responds that he truly owns Doug. When Slowick rejects Dave's attempt to buy his rescue with money, he tries to flee but is halted by staff. Although Bryce notes that Doug kept Slowick open during the pandemic, Slowick gripes that Doug persistently questions his menu. After Elsa waves her arms and Doug is submerged in the water till he drowns, Slowick declares that he is at last free and then heads to his office. Margot's table timer goes off, and she is requested to go visit Slowick. In exchange, Slowick acknowledges that he can tell Margot is a fellow sector worker even if Margot acknowledges that she shouldn't be here. He's curious as to why Margot continued to stare at Richard, forcing her to admit that she works as a street vendor. Richard was among the select few clients who could make her uneasy, since he desired for her to assume the role of his daughter during their flirtatious moments. Slowick and Margot both concur that horrible customers have turned them into people who detest their work. They used to love helping people. Slowick then leads them all outside. Sub-chef Catherine serves the following course and explains that Slowick has repeatedly flirted with her, but she has always said no. The following dish, Man's Folly, was inspired by Slowick's decision to cease staring her in the eye rather than fire her. After giving Slowick a leg stab by Catherine, she gives him a hug and stains his chef costume with blood, which makes him apologize. All of the male visitors are now given the opportunity to flee. They will have 45 seconds to do so before staff members attempt to apprehend them. Except for Tyler, all the guys start running, so Slowick has to send him outside while Catherine brings the women inside. Sitting at the same table as Catherine, who says that everyone dies was her idea, the women try the sixth course. She starts crying at Lillian's praises, so the other women start praising her too in an effort to cheer her up. Winnan asks Margot if she knows her husband. She acknowledges that she does, but then stays silent. In the end, Margot confesses that she is from Massachusetts and goes by Aaron. Tyler dislikes missing a course, so he spies on them outside via the window. Regardless of whether the men went to the beach or the forest, the staff follows them and finds them unharmed. Ted was rewarded with a passered egg for his efforts to hide in the smokehouse. After bringing all the men back to the restaurant, Felicity confesses to taking money from George after he sarcastically apologizes to her for being a failure. Felicity knew that George already knew. Abruptly, Slowick declares that the menu cannot go forward as scheduled until they have fixed an outstanding issue. He confronts Tyler and forces him to acknowledge that he had always known that Everyone Dies would be on the menu tonight. After his girlfriend ended their date, Tyler hired Margot because the restaurant didn't take bookings for just one person, and he didn't give a damn that she might die. This news upsets Margot, who attacks Tyler. However, the staff quickly disassembles them. Then, Slowick demands that Tyler cook in front of everyone even though Tyler doesn't want to, pointing out how much Tyler knows about food and giving him a chef's suit before forcing him into the kitchen. Tyler is a sloppy cook, which results in a disastrous final dish, especially since Slowick always poking fun of him for being Mr. Knowledgeable Foodie. After telling Tyler that he is the reason the mystery has been removed from his artwork, Slowick whispers something in his ear, causing Tyler to remove his chef jacket and start crying. Later, Slowick approaches Margot one-on-one to request a favor. They need a big bucket, which Elsa neglected to bring. That should be in a corner before they can begin making dessert. Elsa claims the staff can do it, but Slowick wants Margot to go get it. Margot doesn't care that Tyler stopped things for himself when she finds out on her way out. When Slowick eventually makes his way back to the dining area, George remarks that this isn't really fair. Slowick reveals that George is being punished because, years ago, he saw Dr. Sunshine and destroyed what would have been his first day off in months. However, Felicity will pass away since she left Brown University with no outstanding debt from her education. Margot arrives at the smokehouse in the meantime, but she grabs a knife rather than the barrel. After that, she slips into Slowick's residence, which is a bed-filled replica of the restaurant. Margot tries to exit through the silver door, but Elsa, brandishing her own knife, stops her and tells her that this is not allowed. Margot is suddenly attacked by Elsa, who tells her she doesn't want to be replaced. Elsa responds that Margot didn't forget the barrel, Slowick was just never asking for it. Margot uses kitchen utensils to defend herself while stating that she doesn't want to work here. As the two women struggle on the ground, Margot accidentally kills Elsa by attempting to keep the knife away from her body. When Margot calms down a bit, she takes Elsa's keys and opens the silver door. She discovers a modest room filled with Slowick's recollections of his happier days, when he worked as a hamburger maker and had a family. Margot attempts to use the room's radio to make an assistance request. Upon returning to the restaurant, Bryce is greeted with a cake, as his buddies had informed them of his birthday. When Margot bursts in through the main door with the barrel, Slowick reminds her that although he was once a monster, everything he does now is pure. Because he can no longer be injured, his chef hands are so strong that he can touch flames without experiencing any pain. When a boat gets closer to the island at that point, Slowick discovers Margot used the radio. As soon as the crew removes all bloodstains off everyone, Slowick threatens to kill an innocent guy if the guests beg for assistance. When Coast Guard Dale walks into the diner, he asks what the issue is, but no one has the courage to speak up. Then, noticing that Dale is a huge admirer of Dr. Sunshine, George pretends to give him an autograph when he requests for one. Dale pulls out a rifle as he is about to depart, realizing that the piece of paper actually means help us and preparing to defend the visitors who have now mustered the courage to speak.